The Geekorama podcast is brought to you by superherofiction.com, the one-stop shop for novels featuring the superpowered heroes we all love. Your hosts are
Trish Heinrich, author of the Vigilante Superhero Universe.
And I'm Jeremy Flagg, author of the Children of Notre Dame universe.
Hi, Jeremy.
Howdy. You notice this might be the first episode we didn't laugh our way into?
I know. Well, it's because we were saving our chatting for later. I think we get ourselves really ramped up with the chatting, and then it's like we're all over the place.
I was just going to call my mom and tell her I finally matured. Only a little bit of a
Only a touch. Only a touch.
So what's been going on with you?
It hasn't really been that exciting over here. Next week is the last week of remote learning for the girls. So then we have to figure out what in the world we're going to do with them. Because, for better or worse, this has kept them busy in the morning. And any camps that we usually send them to is the big one, the one that they absolutely love. It's like a week-long day camp out in nature. They come back absolutely filthy, from head to toe. It's great. It's the way it should be. And that camp is not opening up registration yet because they don't know if they're going to be able to really function with the phase 3 restrictions here in our state. So we're waiting on pins and needles for that. And then the science camp that my youngest wanted to go to was delayed until August. And it's actually not even a camp now. They're sending materials to the house, and it will be instruction over YouTube. That will be her camp.
Wow, you really did just take all the fun out of the word camp.
Yeah, well, but I think she'll be fine because for her, it wasn't about the other kids. It was about building robots.
Okay.
So I think she'll be okay.
My boss is actually the robotics teacher. I should get you the stuff that he does with his students remotely.
She'd love that.
Because they build virtual robots. She's
only 7, but she is the Lego construction set queen, man. She eats it up. So that's us. We're just trying to figure out, okay, what do we do with the kids after next week? And how do we stay productive? And should we take a vacation where it's basically us staying at home playing video games? Which would be fun. So that's it.
I don't know if I'm going to do a vacation this summer. So for me, school theoretically ends this Friday, but I still have one more week worth of stuff. And my college ends Friday, and then my new class starts on Monday. So
wow.
But I'm looking forward to it. It's a class I've taught before. So today I was like, you know what? I really need to make some announcements in that class just to get them ready. Copy paste.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, no point in reinventing the wheel. So it's going to be a lot more easy on the admin side, which means I can spend a lot more time focusing on the students, which is really every teacher's dream anyway. So
yeah.
But yeah, vacation. I originally, if I wasn't going to be able to go to Scotland, I was going to drive cross country and just do stupid stuff. But I don't think we're there yet. So.
Yeah, I don't think we are. I think for us, it's a lot of stress to try to work with the kids being here, and just, it's a lot. So I think for us, it would be more just to have a week where we don't have the pressure of having to get work done, where we can play with them and relax and sleep in, and there's not the stress of getting everything on the to-do list done. I think that's really what we need.
And you can always plan, go to the shore, go do nature hikes. You can kind of make it a productive, fun time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There are tons of trails around here that we can walk on. That's not a problem. So.
Yeah. I should probably figure out what I'm going to do. I don't know. Normally,
what are you up to?
Normally, summertime for me is book writing time.
Yeah.
And so normally this is when I amp up my production, and it's been amped up. I can't amp up much more. So.
No, you can't, because you need to sleep.
But I am looking forward to not having not the stress, because school for me has not been a stress. For elementary school teachers, middle school teachers, it's been horrible. For me in my department, I already teach remotely. I do online stuff. I've been fine. But taking out all the busy work and the state mandated stuff and all of that, I'm really looking forward to getting that off my plate. And now I can go about my day and not go, oh God, what do I have to do by 4 p.m. today, or I'm going to get yelled at. So I'm looking forward to doing exactly what I'm doing now, but taking out this major stressor.
That's great.
So that's exciting. But
yeah,
otherwise, I'm editing some books and writing. Like, same thing.
Yeah.
Nothing ever new in my life. I'm very much a creature of habit.
I love habits and schedules and things that I can expect. Oh yeah, huge fan. Which obviously is why I had kids.
I was gonna say you might have sidelined that schedule thing.
Yeah, although my oldest thrives on a schedule too. So that was great. Like that's always been, we relate in that respect. Putting her on a schedule as a baby was awesome. My youngest, on the other hand, she's like, no, I will not be confined, you know, and she does it with flair, so I can't really be mad.
As long as you strike a pose.
She does, yes.
Do you want to do pop culture history?
Yeah, actually, I'm super excited about this month because we're talking about some of my favorite things, which is summer blockbusters. So last week we did the 80s. This week we're going to do some of the 90s. I'm just going to highlight 3 that came out in the summer sometime in the decade of the 90s. So first up is Jurassic Park. It came out in 1993, and it is the 3rd highest grossing film of that decade. A fun little tidbit of trivia: the T-Rex, the mechanical T-Rex, apparently would malfunction due to the rain. And so it would start to just do something like in the middle of a lunch break and scare the crap out of everybody. And they couldn't figure out what was like going on. And they finally did, but it was really close to the end of production. And so people had kind of gotten used to it by then.
Some real robotics issues.
Yeah. Like it's very reminiscent of Jaws, honestly. Like,
I wonder if he's just sitting there going, yup, it's happening again.
Exactly. It's like if something doesn't go wrong, then he doesn't have a hit on his hands. Like that's kind of how I feel.
Someone's messing with him all these years. Someone's just been like following him around.
Yeah, some kind of gremlin. But I think that's hilarious. Can you imagine being on a lunch break on that set and having the T-Rex be like, Rrr!
I remember seeing that movie in the theater, and it was fascinating because I mean, granted, there's some stuff that doesn't hold up to modern day, but for the majority of it, as long as you overlook that girl constantly saying she's a hacker, I'm willing to forgive everything else.
Yeah. That was just pointless information. Honestly, I could watch that movie just for Goldblum in tight pants. I mean, that's...
You're the reason that meme exists.
It's literally the first time in my life I understood his appeal. I didn't get it any other time. I was like, I don't get the appeal of this man until I saw him in those tight black pants, and I was like, I get it now.
Have you ever seen The Fly?
No, I had no desire.
Just go look up some screenshots of it. Not The Fly itself, but Goldblum in it. He has superhero abs. Like there are like 12 of them.
Like, oh my God.
You could like hit them with a spoon and it would make a metallic sound.
Holy crap.
There's even a scene where he's doing a pull-up and you're like, Green Arrow? Yeah.
I'll Google it.
If you are into abs, I mean, don't watch the rest of the movie because it'll destroy it for you, but he got hired because he was hot.
Huh, okay, yeah. Like I had heard like, oh my God, Jeff Goldblum is so hot, but I never got it until Jurassic Park. Then I was like, all right, I understand now.
Okay, what else do you have?
Okay, yeah, we won't talk about abs, hopefully. I don't know. I'm not promising anything. 1994, the summer of 1994, Forrest Gump was released, and it is the fourth highest grossing film of the decade. Tom Hanks apparently was not paid for the film. Instead, he took percentage points of like the gross, whatever was made from the film, and it netted him $40 million, which is just freaking incredible.
So didn't Robert Downey Jr. get something like 70 million for one of the Iron Men?
Well, actually, okay, so this is what Robert Downey Jr. did. MCU didn't exist, right, before Iron Man.
Yeah, he asked for tickets.
Yeah, he asked for percentages of all the films that he was in as Iron Man in the future. So the percentage, he got a salary, he got a base, and then he said and he took a really low one. So he took a low base salary for the film, and then he got percentage points for literally any other film that he appeared in as Tony Stark or Iron Man. So those little cameos in Spider-Man, he gets percentage points of those movies.
So for some reason, I thought he made like some astronomical number, but maybe that's including that. But because $40 million sounds big, but I wonder what the highest paid gig ever was.
That's a really good question.
I have some researching to do.
I know, but I do know that basically Robert Downey Jr. got the golden ticket because everybody else that was ever in any of those movies going forward were lowballed. You might think that, oh, they got paid a lot. No, they got paid a pittance.
And I mean, I got to be quite honest. Like, I did not expect Forrest Gump to ever be a big movie. Granted, I was young. That would have been when I was like 13. So the nuance of that movie was 100% lost on me. But seeing it later in life, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a good movie. Just didn't think a movie told in that manner, would have been a big hit.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought it either.
Oh, and when the mom died.
I mean, Sally Fields, man.
Though I have to admit, the girlfriend, still to this day, just want to punch her in the throat.
Robin Wright, yeah.
I hated what she did to Forrest.
All right, we got one more. So summer of 1997, Men in Black premiered, and I do have a soft spot for this film, I will admit. I think it's so much fun. It is the 9th highest grossing film of the decade. Vincent D'onofrio, who plays Edgar, hands down one of the best villains ever. He researched bugs. He watched hours and hours and hours of bug documentaries for his role, and he ended up wearing knee braces and taping his ankles in order to achieve the iconic gait that he has in that movie. I also heard that he threw his back out because, I mean, that is some incredible body work. Also, I think this is hilarious. Will Smith did not believe that Steven Spielberg was on the phone offering him the part. He thought somebody was punking him.
Well, because I mean, his biggest thing up to that point was Fresh Prince, and then was Bad Boys. Bad Boys was before that.
I think so, yes. But Fresh Prince was really where he had kind of hung his hat.
Yeah. And I remember there was the rap for Men in Black.
Yeah.
You were like, is like part of his writer that he has to do a music video for the movies then?
He didn't do one for Independence Day, which I also have a soft spot for. It's not a good movie, but I think it's fun. I'll watch it.
I would rather have him rap the speech than have to listen to that. Like, just, I want a little voiceover and some dancing.
Agreed.
Perfect.
Yeah. So that's your pop culture.
Goldblum.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But that's your 90s summer blockbuster overview for pop culture.
Yeah, I saw all of those in the theater.
There's a lot more. There's lists online if anybody's interested in listing like the top 15 highest grossing films of the decade of the 90s. And you will be surprised by some of them. I wasn't, but some of them you will be like, wow, that one. So I would suggest going and looking it up because it is a lot of fun.
Because it's always going to be Titanic.
That is the #1 movie, yeah.
Wow.
But there were a couple I was like, wow, that's a lot higher than I thought it would be. The #2, I'm not going to tell you what #2 was, but the #2 one really surprised me.
Because Matrix came out in 99.
It is on the list, but it is, I believe it's in the top 10, I think.
Because I would have thought that the majority of its money came later, but I don't know how they figured that out.
Word of mouth definitely helped that film. People went batshit crazy for the special effects,
dude,
in particular.
I still, in all of my design classes, refer to the original TV ad, which was just the following letters. It says, "What is the Matrix?" End of story. Nothing else. No one knew what it was about.
Brilliant. Yeah, totally brilliant.
You went to that movie because you were like, I need to figure this out.
I need to know what the Matrix is, man.
You didn't even know what genre it was, other than you're like, that's computer green.
Yeah.
So, no, I think that's a pretty good list. Summer was when we always would go to the movies, so
yeah,
all of them.
Well, and the summer blockbuster, the whole thing about big movies being released in the summer, it really started in the early 80s, which we talked about last week. And then in the 90s, man, it was ramped up. Like everything came out in the summer.
Well, and then I always found it funny when things transition to the summer release, but then there's the Thanksgiving to Christmas rush.
Yeah, that's a big one too.
And some of those films, you're like family films, I would understand, but some of them you're like, is this appropriate for kids to be here?
Well, I don't remember this being a thing when I was younger. Maybe it was, and I just wasn't aware of it. But like horror movies, hardcore, gruesome horror films being released around Christmas. I'm like, I didn't know this was a thing.
Can I just tell you that that's probably what made me not kill everyone in my house? I got to watch it happen elsewhere.
Okay. All right.
And after being cooped up with my family on vacation, it was touching.
Okay. Catharsis. All right. No,
well, that's like one of my favorite horror movies is My Bloody Valentine in 3D. It came out on Valentine's Day.
Oh my God.
Like, if you went to the movie theater to see that with me, then we're tight. If you were like, no, and be like, no, peace out.
We're done. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your geek out for the week?
My geek out is Schitt's Creek on Netflix. I am so late to the party on so many things. Seriously, Veronica Mars I did not discover until it was like off the air and the movie was out. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it was off the air before I became a total Buffy nerd. So it's not a surprise that I am coming to this show after it's already done and everybody else talks about how awesome it is. But I have been a fan of Catherine O'Hara and Eugene Levy for a very long time. When I was in acting school, like, God, it's 16, 17 years ago now, we would talk about the Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara, and the other actors they worked with from Second City, and I believe it was Second City, and the Christopher Guest films, which was a lot of improvisation. And so they were always kind of my idols when it came to like, quirky, weird acting stuff. And so I watch anything that they're in. Like, I just love them. And in this show, they're beyond brilliant. It's about a very rich family that their business manager embezzles all their money and they're totally poor. And the only thing they have left really is a little bit of money and the deed to this town called Schitt's Creek, which the father, Eugene Levy, bought for his son as a joke. And real life father and son, Eugene and Daniel Levy, created the show. They act in it as father and son. You could totally tell they're related. They look almost exactly alike. it's just so charming and so funny, and these people are very self-absorbed, but at the same time it's kind of charmingly self-absorbed, and the town has several people that are way more like ew awful kind of human beings than them, so it balances everything out. Also, if anybody watched Winona Earp, which I totally loved, the actor that plays Holiday is also in Schitt's Creek, and he's very good in it. He's just, unfortunately, all I can see when I look at him is Doc Holliday, but it's so funny. If you need something that is light, something that is an escape, it's going to make you belly laugh. I cannot recommend this show enough. It's really fun.
So I have been watching, so not my geek out, but my binge right now is watching Queer Eye, which if people haven't been watching it, oh yeah, Happy Pride Month. I keep forgetting this. Oh yeah, that's a thing. I only remember because Queer Eye came out. It's like a guaranteed you will cry, have a happy cry once per episode.
Aww.
Like, they do it in such a way that, like, you're like, here it comes. I can hear the music. I'm ready. So that's been my binge. But my geek out is I was on a podcast called I'm going to pronounce it wrong. Retro-Octopus. I can't say it. It's with my a writer friend of mine, Steve Van Sampson, and he was like, "Oh, you want to do it?" Like, they talk about retro things, like growing up in the '90s, and like they talk like all '90s culture.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it's like it's your childhood bastardized. And so they were like, "Oh, do you want to do the 1992 X-Men, the animated series?" And I was like, "Sure. What about this X-Men series? What about this one? What about this one? What about this one?" And they were like, "Bring it." So for the last week, I didn't actually have to watch the original 1992 one because that's my childhood. I got that memorized. I had to rewatch Pride of the X-Men from 1989, I think.
Damn.
It was originally supposed to be the first cartoon, but for some reason Marvel pulled out of it, and then we got this 1992 version, which is kind of the classic, iconic.
Mm-hmm.
And then watched X-Men Evolution, my least favorite. Your daughters might actually like it. It's
I think I've seen an episode of that.
It's young friendly.
Okay.
The strife in it is like dialed down, but the high, because it takes place in a high school, it's very drama filled. So
they'll love that.
And then I just I finished today all of Wolverine and the X-Men, which is by far the best of them. I dare someone to fight me. And then I started watching X-Men the anime series, which, whoa.
There's an anime?
Yeah. So.
Oh my god.
It's the best Dark Phoenix storyline of all of them, and it takes place in 30 seconds in the opening credits. Done. And then the rest of it's basically just Cyclops being like, "Jean," over and over again. Except
that's the best Scott Summers I've ever seen. Like right there.
Yeah, if you want something hilarious and fun, go look up the honest trailer for X-Men the Animated Series. It is hilarious because it's just like there's like a good 30-second part where they're like in the show where two lovers constantly have to say the other's name, and it's just 30 seconds of Scott, Jean, Scott, Jean.
Okay, I'm gonna watch that when we're done here because that just sounds epic.
And then it's like, and the only cartoon where fainting can be considered an orgasm, and every time Jean Grey faints, it's like over and over, and you're like, whoa.
That is so awesome. Yes, absolutely.
So,
I'm looking that up.
yeah, I highly suggest. We'll put it in the show notes. It's hilarious. And then I had some that they didn't even know about. Dazzler's Your Girl. Someone made a fan music video starring Leela Shanae and Dazzler and the New Mutants.
Holy crap.
A legit band and a legit singer. And she does it in roller skates with special effects. It's awesome. So
you have to link to that too, because that just sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's the best Dazzler we're ever going to get. And it might be the best New Mutants we're ever going to get at this rate. So take what you can get.
Yeah. Swear, they should just release that movie on Disney Plus. I swear.
No, at this point, I want the CEO of Disney to deliver it to my house himself and apologize.
And wear mouse ears while he does it.
Yes. I have been like the only advocate for this movie for the longest time. I still think it's going to be awesome, and everyone else is like,
Did you see the Zoom? So shows are doing all those Zoom reunions. The Community one was amazing. But they did one. It was like all of the New Mutants actors aged up to like 80.
Yeah. So the Old Mutants reunion of the movie that never happened or something like that.
Yeah, like the New Mutants is finally released, and it's reactions from the cast, and they're all like really old.
I love Arya Stark. She'll always be my favorite.
She's pretty kick-ass. She was great in, if you like Doctor Who, the Peter Capaldi years, she had a part, I forget which season it was. It might have been his first one. She was incredible in that show.
She's in a Seafret music video.
She's in a what?
The band is called Seafret. They're from the UK, and she's in one of their music videos, and she has superpowers.
Oh my God.
See how I can bring that back to the conversation?
Yes, you can. Sorry, I got off track.
No, Doctor Who kind of counts. That's definitely geek.
Yeah, that's totally geek. Yeah, oh yeah.
So, ready for the deep dive?
I am ready for the deep dive. I'm curious about this conversation. Could be really interesting.
So last week we talked about what makes a good superhero, and we kind of agreed on most things here. Like the character has to be somehow relatable, can't be cut and dry, has to have some moral ambiguity. Like none of this perfection crap.
Yeah.
They have to have like reasonable weakness and flaws, and like, I mean, almost I think the checklist of a good character in anything.
Yeah.
So many superheroes, they're like, this one doesn't apply. Like, no, they still apply. Oh, by the way, I got to officially release the Heinrich flag test in another medium.
You did? Where?
On the podcast I did. They were like, it sounds so official. And I was like, well, if Bechtel can do it, so can we.
We got to protect our genre, man. Yeah. We got to protect it.
Trademark.
So it's what all the cool kids are doing. They're trademarking stuff.
We had that conversation. So this week, what we wanted to do is we wanted to talk about what makes good villains. And a good villain, really, I don't think a good book can exist without a good villain. And I've watched far too many, and this goes for movies as well, where the villain is so bad that you're just like, I'm done with this. Like, there's no stakes, there's no intrigue, there's no, why is this happening? Like, I'm over it. And I think the cop-out, and I'll be the first one to say I'm guilty of this. In my book, my villain is just absolute evil. There's no redeeming factor. And I put in a slight moment of redemption where the other characters are like, oh, now we see. And he's like, nope, psych, I really am just evil incarnate. And I could get away with it. I'm going to lie and say I got away with it because I had a big ensemble cast that I could rely on them to be their own enemies. But without good villains, you have a hero just chilling.
Yeah. And I think the thing that immediately springs to mind that is a great example of what you're talking about in terms of like if you don't have a good villain, the story is lacking, is the movie Civil War, the Captain America Civil War movie from the MCU.
Oh
the villain made no sense. I mean, first of all, the motivation, the plot, none of it made any sense. And none of it was really, in the end, nothing felt really threatening. The thing that was more threatening was how they were tearing each other apart. That was what felt more threatening.
The biggest, so I'll 100% agree. However, it is one of my favorite movies for completely not plot related reasons. Because I can't defend that. Much like X3 is one of my favorite movies. Can't defend it. It's just an unfortunate fact. The actual villain in that was that Tony Stark unfriended him on Facebook.
Yeah.
That was the villain.
Yeah.
The actual villain could have been deleted from that storyline. Oh, I can give you one even better.
Ooh.
Suicide Squad.
Oh my God, yes.
So we could do an entire episode and just read you the catalog of things that are wrong with that movie. But I think the biggest one for me is that the villain, super cool looking special effects. And then we get to this final confrontation and it's basically a slap and tickle.
Yeah.
And lots of plot holes, like why didn't this happen sooner? And why didn't this crazy get unleashed in a different time? And why, like,
also the threat just wasn't there. I mean, that's the other thing is it's like, oh God, the threat wasn't there. They tried to make it this big tragic thing. And I'm like, I don't care about any of you. I'm really, except for Amanda Waller. I'm like, can we just have a movie called Amanda Waller? And I will be totally happy.
And I just want her to kill everyone.
Like she did.
But
that scene, I was like, shit.
I want it to be all like, hey, Bob, you're doing a great job today at work. Bang. Like, I want her to be everyone's friend just so she can get the shock look of when she kills them.
I would watch the shit out of that movie. I really would.
Yeah, like, you could have deleted everything else out of that movie.
Except for Amanda Waller.
All 30 seconds of her. But yeah, so... And then there's other great movies like Harry Potter, for instance. Voldemort is clearly the least interesting thing in that movie. I don't care actually about Voldemort whatsoever. Snape, however, was an intriguing villain, or was he, or wasn't he, or I don't even remember anymore. But I just remember all I cared about was his storyline in relationship to Harry. And he was so much more interesting. Whereas this wizard who just wants to come back and do bad things because he wasn't able to finish his bad things the first time. Like, dude, did you not learn? Yeah.
I think I agree with you. Snape is far more the interesting antagonist. He's a foil, but he is a weird mix of so many different things. Like he's a hero on one end because Harry couldn't have done any of this without Snape. On the other hand, he is villainous because he takes all of this, like, 12 some odd years of hate about Harry's dad, and he takes it out on this poor kid that, like, he's like, I'm just here to learn how to cast spells, dude. Like, I don't even know what your deal is. But he is by far one of the most interesting aspects of the books or the films, hands down.
If you look at Voldemort's collective of villains, they're all way more interesting than Voldemort.
Agreed. So Draco's way more interesting. Yeah.
And like, if you don't have a strong enough a villain, we're going to gravitate to these other things. And if we gravitate to these other things, then we care more about those storylines. Where I would much rather have watched a 2-hour movie where Draco and Harry like compete in a spelling bee than deal with Voldemort. And the reason for that is because their chemistry was so great. Draco was mildly complex, mostly obnoxious, but we really all just wanted to watch him get spanked over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I really liked that almost like human-esque. It wasn't a magical reason they disliked each other. It was sheer boys being dumb.
Well, and it was Draco. Draco's an abused child. I mean, let's be honest. He doesn't. He's an abused kid, so he's acting out as a lot of abused kids do. He's taking his anger at his abusive father and as a situation out on Harry and the situation there. And there, yeah, I honestly, the scenes with Draco and Harry and the rest of the gang, I love those scenes from the movie in particular. That is just a fascinating, like, tug of war of wills, and like, yeah, he's a bully and you want to see him get smacked, and when Hermione does it, it is glorious.
Oh yeah,
but it's so much more interesting than anything else. Yeah, I
know. So in superheroes, there tends to be a little bit of a shortcoming, and I can sum this all up with Spider-Man.
Interesting.
Okay, we have Doc Ock. Okay, I interesting. The Lizard, Electro, Hydro, Firebug, like, we just see the same villain over and over and over again. And at the beginning, their depth of character wasn't really big. And then we have all of a sudden Venom comes around. And what I really liked about Venom in this situation was he was just pure it. And he literally became a self-rival of Spider-Man while they were together. But I mean, really, can anyone tell me what Hydra's real name is?
I've never even heard of the guy. I don't.
Scorpion, the Beetle, Rhino. I can keep going. Like, they're just incredibly lame.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, later on they do get built up and they're way more interesting. The Spider-Man Homecoming made me like Vulture.
Oh my God.
And
oh my God.
And really, Vulture is just a crotchety old man most of the time. And
yeah,
I gotta kind of admit, it was the Vulture story I always wanted and didn't know.
It was so good. I have to admit, I had the same reaction when I found out they were doing the Vulture. I was like, who? And Dan's like, so he gives me the 411. And I was like, well, who's playing him? And he's like, Michael Keaton. And I'm like, I'm in.
Yeah, I want
to see it now.
And there was a really cool movie in the fact that it's not a Spider-Man origin. We've gotten enough of those. We're over it.
Oh, God,
it's a Vulture origin movie told through the eyes of a teenager who just by chance has powers. Oh, okay, your premise is slightly tweaked and I'm intrigued.
Well, and one thing I loved, and this is actually probably definitely on my personal list, is they didn't just have him be a villain just because, ooh, I'm a bad guy. It was, he got screwed over. Like his business partners got screwed over. He felt like he was getting punished. He got the short end of the stick and it wasn't fair. So he's like, fine, I'll take matters into my own hands. I will safeguard the future of my employees. I will safeguard the future of my business, and I'll do whatever it takes. And I don't care if it's illegal. And anybody really, I think most people can relate to that frustration of outside forces unfairly impacting your life in a really profound way and feeling powerless to do anything about it. And then you watch this guy take that power. And obviously can't agree necessarily with how he does it, but it's at least a relatable reason. And I love that about a villain.
Don't give me alien technology. I would be the Vulture. A very and I think like this is something and we can call back to D'Onofrio on this. In Daredevil, the Netflix TV show, The D'Onofrio, he wants to rule New York. I mean, just plain simple motivation. Okay. We've known this about him, and if that was all it was, it would have been so boring. And I remember when he was staring at the wall, at the white wall, and the first time, I mean, they hovered there for an uncomfortably long time, and you're like, I know this is important, but you're not explaining it. And they're like, we're just going to let it go for a little while. And then when you come back and you understand the painting involved in that, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Like, to the point where the whole first season, you're waiting for Daredevil to get his suit. And you're like, yes, he finally gets a suit. And then you're like, oh, man, he's going to beat up D'Onofrio. I kind of want Kingpin to win now. And Kingpin starts slamming him into the van. I was like, maybe they'll just end the series and he wins. Like, I'm okay with that. I'm on board. On Netflix. So when you can make them relatable, where and almost to a little bit of a dark psychology way, like, yeah, I would be that. If given those circumstances, I would 100% be the bad guy, and I would do these bad things. I would win.
Yeah, of course. Like, we all think that. It's like, I am actually the hero. And that is, I think that's what it boils down to. A really good villain doesn't see themselves as the villain of the story. They see themselves as the hero. And I know we've heard that a lot about really good villains, but drilling down into what makes that possible, I think it's what we've both been talking about, that kernel of relatability, where it's like, if my life had taken this turn, I could be that person.
And this will be the only time you ever hear me defend this. I had zero desire to see the Joker movie. I disliked it on pretty much a fundamental, universal, didn't need to be made. I'm over it. I would rather watch Twilight Dude be Batman than watch that movie. That's how much I disliked it. But there is a moment where you go, I get it. And in that like little moment, you realize that the character has been built around it. Now, unfortunately for me, it relied far too heavily on mental illness being the cause and the reason. Yes, it's the Joker. I get where we're going with that. But they had me for a moment where I believed and I understood him and I wanted him to win, but then they started relying on the illness too much again. And it felt like an out when they didn't need it. So that was kind of my beef with that movie. Like, you took my bad opinion of this movie because I walked into it wanting to hate it, and you got me right to the door, and then you shut it on me. So, and I think
I hate movies like that, where you're like, you almost had me liking this, and then you did that, and it's like, no, can't.
And that's why, like, I really love a character that makes me. This is gonna sound so horrible. Makes me think dark thoughts.
Makes you think what?
Makes you think dark thoughts.
Yeah. Oh, like, yeah. I can relate to that.
And this is gonna get way into our last one. Because there's moments where you're like, oh God, I get it, and you, ew, like you feel bad because you empathized with this horribleness. But there are some villains who don't need to go this weird kind of line. You have Catwoman. Yeah.
And I think we were going to do do you still want to do the Catwoman Harley Quinn comparison?
Yeah,
because Catwoman is a weird one for me, because I know she's technically a Batman villain, but I've never felt like she belonged there. Not even, I mean, my first exposure to her was the campy 1960s television show. And then I was like, is she really a bad guy? I was like, I don't think she's really a bad guy. She just likes shiny stuff. She's a thief. And yes, I know thieving is wrong, and there's all kinds of different iterations of her. There's one where she steals stuff to help, the disadvantaged children, and that she's kind of collected like kittens. There's like that one iteration of her in a comic. I think this was several years ago. Then there's the one that we see in the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, where it's a woman who's just basically like, screw everybody. The system is rigged. I don't give a shit. I'm going to get mine and everybody else can go screw themselves. And then there's my absolute favorite iteration. And most of this, obviously, is from television and film, but Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns. It's, to me, the gold standard of Catwoman. And I understand that this isn't like the traditional Catwoman origin, but there is really a part of me that loves that it's a woman who's like, you know what? I am just so done. I am done with men crapping on me and taking advantage of me, and I'm taking some power back, bitches. Granted, she does it in a way that's not healthy.
Oh, no, I'm perfectly okay. If men have done you wrong and you want to put on leather and get a whip, by all means, I support you.
Yeah, and that really, I mean, if you want to boil it down, yeah, okay, she fell out of a skyscraper and hit her head and cats bit her fingers, whatever. At the core of her character in that movie is patriarchy. I'm going to burn the shit down. And she does. The department store that she basically explodes, that's burning down the fucking patriarchy. And I love it.
And I love for her that, yes, she is probably the most sexual as far as live action goes.
Yes.
But it's an uncomfortable sexual.
Yes.
Like, when she licks the side of his face, like, that should be titillating. And in a moment, you're like, my testicles are concerned. Like, what's she about to do?
Yes, it's very threatening, but at the same time, I still see it as her taking this feral control of her body and her urges and who she is, and it's just, she boils it all down to the more primal.
Her sexuality rides this line of danger, and let's be honest, I'm going to say the vast majority of men definitely like a little bit of danger.
Absolutely.
Maybe not reality, but they like to think about it.
Yeah, no, she's definitely, there's no question that she is viewed through the male gaze in that film. No question whatsoever. But as a young woman it was the first movie I went to without my parents. So I'm sitting there at a midnight showing with a bunch of costume nerds. And that was like a new thing for me too. Like, people were dressed up. And I see this woman and she's in skin tight leather and she has a whip and she like doesn't give any fucks about anything. And I was like, oh my God, that is amazing. And so I think for me, I mean, the reason I bring her up as a villain, like, that has something that I think makes a good villain, is that I don't care kind of attitude about stuff. Like, I don't really care.
And I like the fact in that particularly, like, she has a sob story that it gets you to that point. But if that sob story had even been taken out, I think I would have still been very okay with it. Because for me, as oh God, I did not see that in theater. I saw that when it came out on VHS. Maybe HBO. But what I remember most about it was that she owned her badness. She knew she was doing the wrong thing. And did not care.
Exactly.
And she owned her sexuality. At no point after she becomes Catwoman, at no point does she let someone take advantage of her.
Absolutely.
And
she has all the agency. She went from having zero agency in her life to having all of it.
So how about, instead of comparing it to Harley Quinn, let's compare it to Catwoman with Halle Berry.
I never saw it on purpose. To this day, I have never seen that movie.
So here is a movie that I finally I watched. I watched every bad superhero movie just because I wanted to rate them, and it wins. I was
Does it really? More than X3? Because that was a steaming pile of doo-doo. I mean, there are things I liked about X3, but it's a steaming pile of doo-doo.
It makes
Elektra?
I would rather watch Elektra. I would rather watch Elektra for 24 hours straight on rerun than watch this once.
Oh my God.
I would rather watch a movie about an assassin that can't kill people than watch Halle Berry pretend to be a cat. So in this movie, the whole premise of it is she is imbued with cat essence through some magical unknown, who cares.
Okay.
And the rest of the movie, she kind of does the right thing, but the bad way, which is so...
It's kind of Catwoman, but...
And I'm tired of it. Like, I am so incredibly exhausted with the Batman. And I'm not even dissing Batman on this one, but he does the right thing with sometimes some brutal methods. But the majority of his characters, especially these gray area people, do the right thing with the wrong methods. And it was, oh, she's fighting some crime. Well, you could have called the cops. Like, you would have gotten the same result. Like, nothing.
Oh my God.
And then
so it was boring.
It was the most boring movie I've ever watched. And what made it even worse was when, I'm not kidding, and Halle Berry, as my father would say, is quite the looker.
She is.
When she is pacing back and forth on the back of the couch, like cats do, because, you know, she's a cat, and she squats down and licks her hand to wipe her head, you're like, okay, we got the point. The movie is called Catwoman. We got it.
But let's compare that to when Michelle Pfeiffer does it in Batman Returns.
And Michelle Pfeiffer does it with like that nervous, like, or no, it starts as like this nervous tick that she does, and then it becomes like this oddly sensual, like.
Yeah. Well, she really takes her time with it. Have you ever looked at that scene? Like, her tongue is so far out, and she's just like big movements, and it's mesmerizing in the most weird way.
You know, at that moment, you were sitting in a movie theater full of erections, right?
Yeah, well, not at the time, but looking back, yes.
All of them.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I can see. But Halle Berry, her story is so we don't care, and then they rely so heavily on this CGI. I mean, the CGI in it is probably some of the worst CGI I've ever seen in my life. It's like 90-level CGI. It makes Storm look believable. Yeah. And we all know I cheered when Halle Berry got killed. So there was no agency, there was no plot, there was no motivation. It was just a complete and utter disaster of, let's get this woman in a midriff, some tight pants, and a whip. And that was the plot right there. And I'm not kidding, the CEO meeting must have been a circle jerk talking about Halle Berry, because that's the movie in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, I've heard that. I've heard everything you're saying, which is why I will probably never watch it. I just don't feel the need.
You will be angry. Just anger on every level possible at the end of that movie.
I don't need any more anger in my life right now.
Whereas Michelle Pfeiffer, I felt vindicated.
Yes.
This just made me want to punch a cat.
Well, don't take it out on the poor animal. It's not their fault.
Oh my God.
Well, and I think and this is where I'll probably end, because I know we have some other things, we have some other villains to talk about too, but just that end where she, Batman takes his cowl off and he's offering her this life and he's saying, don't do this, let's be together. And her whole decision of, I couldn't live with myself. I couldn't live with myself if I let another man come in and take away what I felt was right, what I feel like I need to do. And no matter what it cost her, she went and did what she had intended to do the whole movie, right up until the end. And whether or not I agree with that decision, that is incredible agency right there. That is incredible power that she doesn't ever surrender to anybody. What? Why are you giving me that look?
Black Widow.
What about Black Widow? She's not a villain, is she? You think she's a villain?
No, her demise.
Oh, I feel like that is different.
I accept it because of the same reason you just said for her. That's how I can walk away not being angry.
Maybe we should have an episode about that, like next week. Maybe that should be next week.
An episode of things we fight about.
Things we disagree on.
Yeah, just things that I want to see if we can yell at each other.
No, I don't want to yell at you.
There must be a superhero topic that we can just fight about.
That would make me sad.
Probably me defending that I like Famke Jensen in X3.
Who was that?
Jean Grey.
Oh, I liked Famke. I've always liked Famke Janssen.
I felt bad that she had such a crap role, but I mean,
yeah, it was very one-dimensional. They made Jean Grey so one-dimensional, and she was like boring. Anyway.
So for our last one, we want to talk about. We do want to put out a trigger warning. No, this is not us being sappy, but it does get like really kind of creepy with the character and what he does in the show. So we just want to put that out there. There is definitely going to be a mention of rape further down the road. So just hands out. If it's an issue, this is where you should stop. All right. So our final one is actually from Jessica Jones, and weirdly enough, we quickly agreed on this one.
Oh yeah, we did. It was the first one we both thought of when we were talking about this.
Yeah. Like I could talk about like Magneto's probably my favorite. But I would have the same conversation I did as him as a hero, which is why he makes me so happy on both. But Kilgrave from Jessica Jones. First off, we're specifically talking Kilgrave from the Netflix series. We're going to get a little bit more into it. We know that there's some differences as far as the comic goes, and we'll mention a couple of them. But David Tennant was a creepy fucker. Oh
my God. That was a masterclass in acting, honestly. If you've never seen it and you would not be triggered by the storyline of rape in that show, you should watch it. It is incredible.
So just the overarching, when you're introduced into Jessica Jones' world, Jessica Jones is a detective who drinks way too much and basically just doesn't give a shit about the world. In a nutshell.
Yep.
We know something bad happened to her, that she went missing for a while, but we don't really know what. In walks David Tennant as Kilgrave. And we know that Jessica Jones is invulnerable. She doesn't give a fuck about anything.
Mm-hmm.
But the thought of Kilgrave showing up, every time she is on the screen and he gets mentioned, I give her mad props for the ability. She goes so cold, tense, uncomfortable, like ready to run.
Mm-hmm. She's in a panic mode. She is dealing with post-traumatic stress, and it's not done in a hokey, cheesy way. It might be one of the best examples I've seen, honestly, of survivors of what happened to her dealing with PTSD, and it's chilling. I mean, those moments you feel afraid and you're like, I don't even know why I'm afraid right now, but I am terrified.
And I think what even amplified it for me was she's Jessica Jones. She's invulnerable. She can't be hurt.
So if she's afraid, what the fuck is she afraid of? Yeah.
And so in walks Kilgrave, who his ability is he speaks and people listen without question, without any regard. And he has had this his whole life, and he abuses it for whatever he wants on a whim. He makes people frequently kill themselves, kill each other. He makes them serve him. In the comic book, it gets a little bit creepier because there's a whole prostitution storyline that comes into it.
Oh
not just him as the perpetrator, but also like an entire like prostitution ring. So he uses his the comic might even be darker than the show.
Damn.
Yeah, and I mean, Marvel, of all the storylines you've ever written, there aren't many that make me go, wow, you went there. And this would be one of them.
I had only ever been exposed to him from the television show. And I told Dan, I was like, I think that's enough. And he's like, yeah, you wouldn't like him in the comics.
No, and in the comic, he is... I give David Tennant some acting chops. He is exactly what you would think from the comic. And what, for me, as a villain, what made me love him so much, we've talked about, actually, most of the people we've talked about today are very kind of low-key villains.
They're not world domination villains, really.
So, like, Thanos, he wants to do his thing. Yes, there's a little complex story, but whatever. The movie's ruined it as far as I'm concerned. There's, Apocalypse, who survival of the fittest. Like, Mr. Sinister wants to collect genetic data, and then I don't know what he actually wants to do anymore. But,
Dr. Doom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have like these world ender villains, and then you have Kilgrave, and all Kilgrave wants is to be loved. And they took this super simple thing that I think every person can connect with.
Yes.
And they pushed it and pushed it and pushed it until it got dark, and then it got really dark.
Yeah, then they said, how much farther into the dark can we push it? And I'll be honest, I didn't feel like there was anything they could ever do to make him redeemable is probably the wrong word, but maybe relatable until they did what?
Yeah, there was nothing to make him empathetic.
Empathetic, yeah, until the episode where we find out about his childhood.
Nope.
And then for me, I have such a soft spot for kids hurting that I was like, okay, there is a kernel of me that's like, at your core, you are a hurting child, but you are also a terrifying son of a bitch.
And at that moment, the hero would have overcome odds.
Yes.
Jessica Jones, her storyline is similar in a lot of ways. She overcame those odds. Maybe not with the best of habits. Not
the best coping mechanisms, but she's not going around like doing bad stuff to people.
She's like, just doing negligent stuff to people. Yeah.
I know. She does tread the line sometimes. That's true.
Yeah. And so in the story, basically, she's been gone for a little while. We don't quite know what's going on. And then she comes back. We don't quite know what's going on. She won't talk about it. No, that's the end of it. And then he shows up. And as the plot evolves, you find out that he has been controlling her as a slave. And all horrible stuff that goes with that.
Yeah.
Exactly what you think. And he believes what is happening is that she loves him. He made it happen. He forced her to love him. but he believes it's real because this is his reality. So in a warped way, he doesn't ever see himself as the villain.
Mm-mm.
He just sees himself as kind of a desperate dude who should probably get a dating app.
Well, and as somebody who's like, you know, he basically thinks Jessica is too, like, she can't realize it for herself. So she has to have him realize it for her. And I know I mentioned this before we started recording, but to me, one of the most terrifying aspects of Kilgrave is that he strips Jessica of everything that makes her her. He doesn't just take away her agency. He takes away anything that is identifiable as Jessica. He makes her dress the way he thinks she should dress. He makes her eat what she should eat, say what he thinks she should say. As a whole, he erases her identity and then controls her body. And that is, to me, one of, hands down, the most terrifying thoughts that anybody could do that.
But here's where, for me, like, that was dark. Let's go darker. Now he knows that she was able to resist him.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still going to happen.
Yeah.
So he knows his power won't make her do what he wants. He can slightly control her. She can resist now.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows that she can resist. So he's going to convince her that of her own accord, she wants to be with him. And it is gaslighting to the nth degree at this point.
Yeah.
Where, yes, does he find her loved ones and threaten to kill them so she'll go along with them? Yes. That's not even the creepy part. The creepy part is when they're out back at a picnic table having a conversation where he's just casually saying, "Don't worry, you will love me." He's not even using his powers to strip her of her agency. He's trying to convince her to strip herself of agency.
That is an excellent point I didn't think about. Yeah.
And that's where you're like, how is it going to get darker? Oh, wait. We got one more step for you.
Which is why Kilgrave is such a triggering... I mean, it's not just about the rape, although that is really incredibly heinous. It's also about, it's the stalker aspect of it. It's the gaslighting aspect of it. It's so many, you know, there are so many triggers around Kilgrave. And I think it's also one of the reasons that makes him such a good villain. He is incredibly complex. His motivations might be simple, but he as a character is incredibly complex in how he views himself and how he views the world. And
in the show, and this is just the level of creepy it went, it never says that she was raped.
Yeah, she does. She accuses him of raping her.
No, I don't, and this could be very open for interpretation. I don't think she meant sex. I think she meant everything else that she did to him. Because she's talking about how he robbed her of her will to live. And so I took that as more of a metaphorical, like, mind rape. Which, yes, probably physically as well, because...
Definitely physically. I mean, I would say most definitely physically. And there's another character, the young woman, which is the other thing. Kilgrave actually takes another girl and does the same thing he did to Jessica, only to get her attention. That's the only reason he does it, is just to get her attention. And the rape is also used to describe what he did to her as well. And Kilgrave has this very interesting reaction to it because he denies that it's rape at all. He's like, "No, you loved me." And she's like, "No, I didn't." And he also mentioned, he's like, "I just hate that word." And she's like, "Well, but you did it. You did that thing."
And the other thing that I think makes him, for me, just so, like, completely batshit crazy is that he is, if you boil down everything he does, he is just an abuser. Like, take everything else, take all the super out, take her super out, boil it down into the very basic storyline. This is a story that abused women everywhere have said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I don't think anything about it is actually original. But let's add some superpowers. But weirdly, his superpower is the same power that abusers already have.
Well, and she definitely has. She has the guilt that a lot of abuse survivors have, or an guilt mindset. I'm not exactly sure how to describe it, but it's along the lines of, but I didn't put up enough of a fight, but I didn't say no, but I didn't do this, and I didn't do that. And she does carry that guilt and that thought in there.
But she didn't stop him. And that was, I think, a big piece of her guilt right there. Is she could have stopped it, not previous, but at the end when she left, she left. She didn't, kill him or stop him from doing what he does. She left. She fled.
Well, and I think she has a line about how I never saw his body. I never checked to see if he was alive or dead. I just made an assumption and I ran. And Trish is trying to tell her, that's okay. After what you went through, that's okay. And she's like, no, it isn't. Look at what he did. Look at what happened. And that guilt is that thought that, well, I wasn't really, they didn't abuse me so much. I let it happen kind of a thing. That is very common in abuse survivors. And you're right. It is a story of an abuser and an abuse survivor. It's just ratcheted up many notches because of the superpowers. And
even then, I don't entirely know if it's ratcheted up that much. There's just a little supernatural element to it.
I don't know. It feels, and I know this sounds so weird, but it feels darker to me because of his ability. Like, to me, that takes it to an especially dark place because they describe it as you want to do it. When he tells you to do something, you want to do it. You are driven to please him, which just makes me have the EBGBs.
And the funny thing is like I said with my character is just truly just flat out evil. Like, just plain simple evil. Nothing, no redeeming factors, no nothing. And it works for my story. But the Kilgrave does the same exact thing. He is the same person, essentially. The same egomaniac, like, kind of off his rocker, not exactly attached to reality. But at the same time, he has a complexity of why he's doing what he's doing. And the story is truly just between the two of them.
Yeah.
And it bleeds out to other people. My villain is basically trying to take over the world because, that's what they do. It's so funny. Like, I so dislike my hero based on my own criteria. But yeah, I think, and just a complete and utter spoiler, at the end when he thinks that he can resist, he knows she can resist him. And then he's so firm in his belief that he says that she won't kill him. And then she kills him.
Yep. Well, what's beautiful about that moment is she convinces him that she's once again in his control and in his thrall. And then she shoots him in the head. And there is not a moment of hesitation on her part. None whatsoever.
And I almost like that she plays him. Like,
big time.
Like, she takes everything that he's been doing and in a very quick, very short scene, turns it around and then drops him.
Yep. She turns it all against him. And so everything he takes pride in, everything he feels like he's got, mastery of, and I guess it's a beautiful turn, a poetic, justice. She strips him of that, essentially. She strips him of all of his power the moment before she shoots him in the head. Which,
that's it. And she does it with a little bit of sarcasm.
Yes, because it's Jessica Jones.
So I guess our question for you is, what type of villain do you like? Do you like the complex villain? Do you like the redeemable villain? Do you just like your villains to have nothing but ambition to destroy the world or watch it burn? So I think that should be it's kind of a cheap and easy question of the week.
I think it's a great question, though, because everybody's going to have a different opinion, and I can't wait to see what it is.
So yeah, we put okay. Quick recap. We have Catwoman, the good Catwoman. We even did Harry Potter. That was out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was, but it fits.
We talked a little bit about Kingpin. We talked. Who was the other one? I already forgot. Man.
Well, we talked about 2 different iterations of Catwoman.
Oh yeah. See,
and then we talked. We were going to talk about Killmonger, but we never got to it.
Oh yeah, I knew Kilgrave was going to just take the conversation.
It did, and that's fine. That's totally fine.
Okay, so answer the question of the week. We'll be back next Thursday, and next Thursday we have some surprise news.
So exciting!
Yes, actually, Trish will have some surprise news next week. So,
am I doing it alone? Am I doing this alone next week?
Well, no, but it's kind of
okay. I see why you're saying it. Okay, I just wanted to check because I'm like, my calendar doesn't have you being out of town.
I'm just gonna slowly ease out of town.
You're like, you can do it on your own. All right.
Okay. Have a good week, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
To stay up to date with the Geekorama podcast, you can watch our videos on YouTube or subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. And if you enjoy the show, leave us a review or hit the thumbs up button. New episodes are released on Thursdays for podcast listeners and YouTube fans.